while the rest of the country watches the snow fall through the safety of double-pane windows, sipping hot cocoa behind thermostat control walls. A silent execution is taking place across the American landscape. In late January 2026, the seasonal winter wonderland has officially transitioned into a biological kill zone. Across two-thirds of the United States, a massive polar vortex has placed over 200 million citizens under extreme cold alerts. But for the nation's 1.7 million unhoused individuals, this isn't just a weather event, it's a countdown. In New York City alone, the death toll from exposure has spiked to levels not seen in decades, with 16 people found dead in the snow in just a 2-week span. From the wind-whipped corridors of Chicago to the frost-covered tents of San Antonio, the social contract is freezing over. This is the countdown of the 10 coldest cities in America for the homeless in 2026, a documentary ranking of where the housing crisis meets the sub-zero reality of a country that has run out of room and out of time. The winter of 2026 has brought a perfect storm of economic and meteorological disaster. As of early February, more than 110 deaths connected to wintry weather have been reported across the United States, representing a catastrophic surge compared to the previous decade's average. This crisis is fueled by a mathematical deficit that is now impossible to ignore. While the American Homelessness Response System added roughly 60,000 new shelter beds in the last year, over 600,000 people enter homelessness for the first time during that same period. This 10-to-1 imbalance has created a shelter gap that forces hundreds of thousands of people to attempt the impossible, surviving minus 20-degree wind chills with no door to close. The demographics of this disaster have shifted. It is no longer just the chronically unhoused, but the working homeless, the 1.2 million Americans who live in their cars, who are now finding that a thin metal frame is no match for the 2026 polar vortex. Starting our countdown at number 10 is San Antonio, Texas. While typically considered a warm weather sanctuary, 2026 has proven that no geography is safe from the shifting climate. In late January, a sharp drop in temperatures along with unexpected frozen precipitation forced the city to open 6 emergency resilience hubs at community centers like Copernicus and Miller's Pond. The shock for San Antonio lies in its lack of specialized winter infrastructure. Unlike northern cities, the southern unhoused population lacks the heavy-duty gear required for a sudden freeze. When the Texas heat vanishes, the result is a humanitarian emergency where city libraries and senior centers are transformed into overnight life rafts for people who never expected to see ice on their tents. At number 9 is Baltimore, Maryland. In mid-January 2026, the health commissioner declared a cold blue extreme cold alert as wind chills plummeted into the single digits. Baltimore represents the wind chill factor crisis, where the moisture from the harbor cuts through clothing like a knife. The city's FI 2026 winter shelter plan has been pushed to its limit, offering motel vouchers and warming buses to those who cannot find space in traditional facilities. The danger in Baltimore is the aging housing stock. Thousands of people hunkered down in abandoned row houses that lack heat or insulation, creating a hidden, invisible homelessness where people freeze behind closed doors in buildings that are effectively walk-in freezers. Number 8 brings us to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, specifically the Kensington Avenue corridor. Known as one of the largest open-air drug markets in the nation, Kensington in 2026 is a landscape of frozen desperation. Here, the crisis is compounded by the stay-awake culture of addiction. Methamphetamine use has surged among the unhoused as a way to stay alert and avoid freezing to death while sleeping. But human biology has a breaking point. When enhanced code blue is activated, outreach teams find dozens of people huddled over subway grates, seeking the only warmth available in a city where the poverty rate remains stubbornly high and the shelter system is perpetually over-encumbered. Moving into the heart of the Midwest, number 7 is Detroit, Michigan. In 2026, Detroit has entered the winter with what social workers call the same winter math. Fixed incomes that don't stretch and heat costs that exceed the reach of the elderly. Nonprofit organizations like the Pope Francis Center have been forced to open emergency sleeping facilities as the city's population of seniors living in poverty faces a utility cliff. For many in Detroit, homelessness doesn't look like a tent. It looks like a 70-year-old woman sitting in a darkened apartment with a utility shut-off notice, praying the temperature doesn't drop another 10 degrees. The city's vast inventory of abandoned structures provides a dangerous lure, shelter from the wind, but a trap for hypothermia when the sun goes down. At number 6 are the high-altitude twins, Denver, Colorado, and Salt Lake City, Utah. In 2026, these cities have become battlegrounds for camping bans. Despite record snowfall and sub-zero temperatures, municipal policies have increasingly criminalized the act of sleeping in public spaces. In Salt Lake City, the camping ban winter has pushed the unhoused further into the industrial outskirts, away from the warming centers they desperately need. At high altitudes, the air is thinner and the cold is drier, leading to rapid onset frostbite. Outreach workers report a surge in amputations as the working homeless in these regions attempt to survive in uninsulated vans that become literal ice boxes at 5,000 feet. Number 5 is Buffalo, New York. Known for its lake effect blizzards, Buffalo in 2026 has seen a repeat of the deadly 2022 storm dynamics, but with a larger unhoused population. The danger here isn't just the cold, but the whiteout effect. When 4 feet of snow falls in 24 hours, 10 encampments are literally buried. You're seeing the rise of snow walls, fortifications built by the unhoused around their tents to block the wind, a medieval survival tactic used in the middle of a modern American city. In Buffalo, the struggle is for visibility. When the city stops moving during a storm, the people in the tents become part of the landscape, often not discovered until the spring thaw. Number 4 is Chicago, Illinois. The Windy City earns its name in 2026 with wind chill corridors that drop temperatures to minus 30 degrees. Chicago's response has been the activation of a massive transit shelter system, where the CTA subways and buses become de facto warming centers. But this has led to a conflict between commuters and the destitute, with federal COVID-era funding from the American Rescue Plan, ARPA, now exhausted. Chicago is facing a fiscal storm that has forced the closure of several temporary winter shelters. The result is a surge in subway sleeping, where thousands of people ride the Blue Line through the night just to stay moving and stay alive. Entering the top 3, number 3 is Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is a city of the deep freeze, where temperatures can stay below zero for weeks at a time. Minneapolis has pioneered the housing-first model, but even its successes are being drowned by the 2026 economic downturn. The city's code blue system is the most sophisticated in the country, yet it is currently operating at 105% capacity. The sheer brutality of a Minnesota winter means that survival outside is measured in minutes, not hours. The gap between the 600,000 new homeless entries and the 60,000 available beds is nowhere more lethal than on the streets of the Twin Cities. Number 2 is New York City. In 2026, the Big Apple has become the epicenter of the cold weather death spike. At least 14 people died in a single bitter storm week in January. The deceased included 90-year-old Doreen Ellis, a woman with dementia who left her apartment and was found dead in the snow. Her story highlights a terrifying 2026 trend, the graying of homelessness, where seniors are the fastest-growing demographic of the unhoused. In November 2025, more than 100,000 people slept in NYC shelters, but the unsheltered population, those in the parks and subways, has reached a record 4,500. Mayor Mamdani's administration has activated enhanced code blue measures, involuntarily transporting those deemed a danger to themselves, but advocates argue that the city's approach is a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, in a market where affordable housing has effectively ceased to exist. Finally, number 1 is Anchorage, Alaska. This is the extreme edge of the American crisis. In 2026, Anchorage is facing a reality that seems pulled from a nightmare, with temperatures dropping to minus 40 degrees and a homeless population of over 3,000. The city only has 614 beds. The crisis reached such a peak in early 2026 that the mayor proposed buying one-way plane tickets for the homeless to fly to warmer cities like Seattle. In Anchorage, the unhoused face a double threat: the cold in the winter and bears infiltrating encampments in the summer. A record 8 people died of exposure last winter, and 2026 is on track to double that number. This is a city where surviving means living in a heated, tent-like structure for 150 people, while thousands more are left at the mercy of the Arctic wind. The common thread across all these cities is the fiscal cliff of 2026. During the pandemic, the $350 billion state and local fiscal recovery fund provided a buffer that allowed cities to prevent these disasters. That money is now gone. At least 20 of the nation's 25 largest cities are staring at massive budget gaps for the 2026 to 2027 fiscal year. As revenue sources struggle to keep up and federal support is slashed, the war on local government has left mayors to choose between clearing snow and keeping people warm. We are seeing a slow-motion disintegration of the public sphere, where the basic necessity of human shelter has been reclassified as an unaffordable luxury. This brings us back to the central question: what does a great city mean if its citizens are left to freeze on its sidewalks? The 2026 winter crisis is an indictment of a system that has allowed the housing market to detach from the reality of human wages. When the life expectancy for an unhoused American is just 50 years, compared to 77 for the general population, the cold is not just a weather pattern. It is a systemic filter. The data from January 2026 tells a story of a nation that is normalizing human suffering, where a body in a snowdrift is treated as a statistical inevitability rather than a moral failure. For the 1.2 million Americans living in their cars, this winter is a trial by fire. In cities like St. Louis, the cold blue level for activation has brought the number of emergency beds to 1,000, yet the demand remains higher. We are seeing a shift where even those with jobs, the working homeless, are seeking refuge in warming buses because their car heaters have failed or they can no longer afford the fuel to keep the engine running through the night. The affordability erosion of 2026 means that for many, the line between middle class and frozen alive is a single missed paycheck or a broken alternator. As we look toward the remainder of 2026, the retail apocalypse is adding another layer of cruelty. As GameStop, Macy's, and Walgreens close thousands of locations, the third places where people once found temporary warmth are disappearing. The empty malls of America are being transformed into data centers for the AI boom, climate-controlled environments for servers, while human beings are left in the wind. The contrast is visceral. We have the technology to house a trillion gigabyte database in a temperature-regulated facility, but we cannot provide a warm room for a 90-year-old woman in Brooklyn. In conclusion, the top 10 coldest cities list of 2026 is a mirror held up to the American soul. From the snow walls of Buffalo to the resilience hubs of San Antonio, the data is clear. The winter is winning because the system is failing. As the polar vortex recedes and the enhanced cold blues are deactivated, the bodies left behind in the snow remain as a permanent mark on the 2026 record. The question for the next winter is not if the cold will return, but if the country will continue to look away while its most vulnerable are frozen out of existence. The only thing colder than an Alaskan night in February is the apathy of society that has decided that some lives are simply not worth the cost of the heater.